Steph, welcome back to the show, mate.
Yeah, brother, it's good to be here.
Awesome. Well, I think a lot has happened. Like I was saying just before the show, I think a lot has happened in your life very quickly. It wasn't too long ago that you were on here for round one. But, mate, just first off, how's the transition been from moving all your stuff over to Texas?
Yeah. Um, Man, look, we're in Austin, so I'm in Austin, Texas. It's a culturally pretty different to California. So, I mean, I've been living in the US for basically 2 years now. Um, you know, it's so different here, man. I don't even know where to start. I mean, and I'll speak to this openly because it's so interesting. So, in Australia, we don't have a gun culture. This is non-existent. Like we don't, if you want to get a gun to go shooting or hunting, it's a 6 or 12-month process. Like you can only get a specific type of gun, which is a hunting rifle. You've got to go through all these process. Man, here you can just walk into a sports store where they'll sell guns. You hand your ID over, and you just literally you wait a few minutes to an hour. They approve you, and you just get a gun. Like it's just the culture here is different. It's similar in California, but here they're just far more liberal with all this. And so that affects the way people hold their own internal values and the collective values here in Texas. So, for example, freedom as a value, freedom of speech, freedom of communication, freedom to do what one wants as a civil person is very, very high on the priority list. And that affects the way people interact, that affects government, that affects corporate here. It's just... And I'm still trying to understand all that because it's just different. It's not that I understand it, but functioning in it, it's a different thing. It's just interesting,
Yeah, it is. And look, I mean, like, it's so different for us here. I was only young when John Howard got rid of all the guns here. So I've never really known. It's very bizarre for me to even see a gun. I'm like, oh shit, what the hell's that? That looks like a weird coffee. It's just very strange. So I think, and I think freedom is a brilliant value, but how far does that kind of water flood into we should be able to hold our guns and things? And is it just a matter of, I don't know, you're walking around, you see them everywhere?
No, it's not so much. I mean, in saying that though, open carry is legal here. So in other words, if it's not, and I haven't seen this yet myself, but it's not uncommon for it's first of all, it's legal. So it's legal for someone to have a semi-automatic rifle on their back walking around. That's legal to do that. It's not an issue at all. So as long as, and again, you can have concealed carry here, but you need a license for that. But you don't need a license for open carry. So my understanding, I could be wrong, but my understanding is, I'm pretty sure this is accurate. You can walk around with a shotgun. You can't walk around with a fully automatic weapon, which is when you pull the trigger and it's just semi-automatic means you've got to keep pulling the trigger, right? This is a difference.
Oh, way better.
Yeah. Well, there's a few differences, but I mean, you can walk around with a semi-automatic weapon pretty sure you can walk around with a machine gun, like an AR-15 or a M16. I think M16 is semi-automatic. I'm not sure. I'm not a gun expert. But, it's just a different culture. I don't think you can do that in California, though. You can't walk around open carry in California. Concealed carry, yes. You have to go through licenses. It's just a different world here, man, and particularly with everything going on. I mean, I was in the gun shop the other day because I'm getting I'm going to learn I'm getting myself a recurve bow. I'm going to learn how to shoot bow and arrows and I really want to practice like target shooting and just practice getting that skill up. And I'm just excited to learn something new. And that's where they sell guns and everything else there. And I was just chatting to guys just because I want to learn. And I'm just curious what's happening. And they have sold out of so many guns, so much ammunition because people are a little scared. They're fearful. So when they have access to weapons, they just go and buy and hoard weapons like they hoard toilet paper and water and shit like that. It's fucking crazy, man. You can get ammo, don't get me wrong, but it's really challenging to get popular ammo like 9mm ammo. It's just interesting, man.
Yeah, super. It's unbelievable. I think, my partner was in Austin for a bit. She'd just done her breathwork course in Albuquerque. And she went through and was coming back. And she was saying it's just that, Yeah, it's just a bit different. I've always been fascinated by it. I think, like yourself, there are two ways we can look at the whole political world, and this is obviously not a show about politics, but just as a
Yeah.
slight segue, I suppose. You can look at someone and go, they're all wrong, I have it right, and my ego reigns superior over the world, over the free world. Or, maybe there's something to that. And for whatever reason, probably because of my own ignorance, the gun thing has been really hard for me to understand. So I think I'd actually need to spend some time over there, a bit like yourself, and go, okay, this is what it is. But yeah, wow, that's fascinating. Surely you'd be loving the weather though in Austin.
No,
Oh,
no fucking way, Tom. Fuck you. It's too
no.
humid. It's too hot.
Right.
California's deluxe. California is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
This is like northern Queensland. It's summer here, man. We didn't come here for the weather. We came here for other reasons. My wife's family's here. We came here because value for money here, man, is amazing compared to California. In terms of our home that we got, but also because we felt it's really good for our service and our expression, our business, and that's been amazing so far. And there's an amazing community here, and Austin is a cool place. It's super green, super hilly, lots of lakes, water sports, really outdoors, but summer is super hot. So summer is very humid, 40, 42 degrees, 43 degrees, like 100, 105, 110 Fahrenheit. Not often 110, but hot, man, and humid, very humid. Like you walk outside and you were sweating like you're in Singapore or Southeast Asia. It's just super, super hot. But that's just something.
Jeez. Yes. Yeah. God, I thought that was winter.
Every other time's nice. No, every other time's nice.
Yeah. Jeez. I wasn't even being sarcastic. I just thought I'd get away with a fair question there. And you're like, dude, fuck you. Like, okay,
I'm cooking.
End of the show. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Oh God. Well, mate. Yeah. Like I said in the beginning of the show, there was one major reason, apart from the fact that you're a great bloke and we had a great conversation before, a major reason why I really wanted to pick your brain, and that was about this vision quest that I haven't seen you write a whole lot. I've been waiting for the little, snippets here and there, but spending a lot of time alone. I think it was 5 days, was it?
Yeah.
5 days. So that's really, really exciting for me to learn from you. So I suppose, like, if you could give the listeners just a bit of context, what was going through your mind in the lead up? Like, when did you start thinking that you wanted to do this kind of solitary vision quest?
Oh man, I've been thinking about this for years because I've been studying rites of passage for a long time in the men's work that I do and have done for a while, and I've taken myself through various practices of solitude in different ways, and this particular rite of passage, this vision quest, it's something I've been thinking about for some time, and it came to me just serendipitously and very, very seamlessly. And so I was at a Sacred Sons event. One of the pillar facilitators there. It's a Sacred Sons is a men's movement, just helping men really break free of their shadows and step into healthier expressions of being a human being, essentially, providing support and providing tools and techniques for healthier practices in life, and very similar to the work that we do as well in different ways. And so I was there facilitating, and my brother, one of my good friends, Jetty, was there as well. And I was speaking to, Jetty's more of a good friend now. At that time, was just more of an acquaintance and someone I deeply mutual respect and so forth. He was a friend, of course. I was speaking to a good friend of mine, Bam, and he had told me that he had done the vision quest with Jetty. And I said, poof, man, I'm all in that. Like, tell me more, and don't tell me more. You don't need to. I'm all in. And I basically just went to Jetty that day. He'd finished facilitating. I'd finished facilitating. And I said, man, Brendan just told me about what he did with you. I'm all in. Give me the details. And that was it. It was done. And then I went through the process, and because, we all need support as men. I consider myself, a strong leader in the community in men's work, and I don't consider myself a lone ranger either. I need support. I'm always growing. I don't always want to be leading a whole group of other people all the time. Sometimes I want to be led, and to humble myself in that way and be open to the teaching and the wisdom of someone else that I really respect and revere. And Jetty's one of those guys. And he really put together a good team, the men that were supporting that whole vision. There was 10 of us. And so we spent a few days together prepping for it. And then we just go in our separate ways and we just hit the wilderness, and we're by ourselves, no food, no books, no digital devices, minimal equipment. I just had a sleeping bag.
Wow.
Some water. I ran out of water because I did a couple of big hikes. But other than that, you're just sort of sitting in a circle and just being with nature. That's it, in the wilderness on your own. And I've purposely not written a lot about it. I did a couple of posts, didn't do much. And you're the first person, I think, that's wanted to specifically interview me about this. I haven't really spoken a great deal about it. I'm also selective with what I say as well, because it was a very personal experience. That's not to say I'm not going to share wisdom that I gained from it and what I think others can gain from doing it, because I'd love for others to be supported by Jetty as well. He runs a very tight ship. Good men that are there. You meet other good men as well. And it's just something that I wanted to do as part of my journey. I've had experiences, Tom, in my life where I've been about to just embark on a particular experience. Like a couple of years ago, I went on a sexual somatic, psychosomatic journey with an older couple that took me through this 3-4 month journey. And before I started that, I knew that was going to be a very integral piece in my growth. Like, I mean, integral to the point where I'm going to go deep. It's going to be very, very difficult. I don't know if I'm going to get through it, but I know it's going to unlock some stuff. And if I get through it, it's going to take me to the next level. And that was that type of experience. This wasn't that for me, but it was something that was needed. For me, it wasn't physically or mentally challenging, but it was deeply revealing and deeply heart-opening and humbling as well. And it allowed me to step into more profound levels of gratitude. And I knew that, to be honest with you, to be completely transparent, the thing that I thought would scare me, because I fast a lot. Fasting's it's not a difficult thing for me. Because I'm used to it. So I'm not anything special. I condition myself to it. It's like a marathon runner saying, I run 10 marathons a year and I've been doing it for 10 years. Like, it's easy for me. That's not.
Yes.
Conditioned to it. What I was going to struggle with, I thought I was going to struggle with, which I didn't, which I was really surprised. I thought I was going to be, like, I had a fear of the dark. Like, I had a fear of being in the wilderness at 8,500 feet elevation, so nearly 3,000 meters, 3 Ks above sea level, in the wilderness. Scorpions, we're in high alpine desert, scorpions, snakes, rattlesnakes, not so much bears, maybe coyotes, maybe mountain lions, because we're in California. Like, all I had was a little knife. Like, that was what really worried me. But man, let me tell you something. Being in nature on your own, and this was my experience, the sun went down and it went dark, and it was just so comfortable. It was the most free. I just fell asleep like that. It was just fucking epic. And that moment, I realized so much more about myself than I thought, in terms of my capacity and just ability to be really present and connected to nature. So that was a really beautiful experience.
Man, you say you'd be afraid of the dark as though it's like a 12-year-old in a comfortable bed with the parents in the next room, and you're like, yeah, I was afraid of the dark, but then coyotes and snakes, and it's like, I think everyone would be afraid, mate. You have a little knife.
Yeah, it's a good knife, but it was small.
Good knife, exactly. No wonder you're trying to learn how to bow hunt.
Yeah.
Go back out there, and that's unbelievable. I think, from the more superficial perspective, just getting away from technology and getting away from, phones and all that sort of stuff, it's amazing how those things creep in. I'll be the first to put my hand up and just say the phone has a hold of me, in a big, big way. So did you find, and I know you've done this before with other things, and that's one of the reasons why I love following you, because you're always offering these kind of challenges in quotation marks to give us different perspectives on ourselves and the world. Did you find there was a transition between, I suppose, coming away from the technology, or were you just like, right, I'm here on the quest?
For me, I've done that numerous times in my life where I've gone a week or 2 weeks without the tech, and again, it was just one of those things that I remember when I first did it was really difficult years ago when I first made a deliberate effort to have a digital detox and move away from tech. It was difficult. I wanted to keep going back, but man, it's you just for me, I've learned to accept. And this isn't always true, but for the most part in my life, I've learned to accept the things I can't control. So we got up there and there's no reception. You can't get reception. There's no sat phone. There's no Wi-Fi. There's no reason for me to look at my phone. I took a couple of pictures of where I was sleeping, not when I was by myself, just when we were in the group. When I was by myself, I didn't bring my phone with me. I left it at base camp. There's no point. And parts of me wish I brought it with me so I could take pictures to show my loved ones where I was. It was really beautiful, and some of the hikes that I did. But at the end of the day, man, that's for me. It wasn't for everyone else, And so it was really easy. I just put my phone in my bag and I did not look at it for literally 11 days. There's no point. What am I going to look at? Like, it's not, I'm just going to look at a screen. And I just thought to myself, no, I don't need that.
Yep. That's a good point.
I mean, the fucker blew up when you're away for 11 days. It blows up after, so I spend maybe 2-3 hours, not even, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, tending to emails, getting to everything. And once I did that, I felt good because I felt I didn't have all these things I had to get back to and attend to. And I put the phone away again. Yeah. That was it once we got down to, lower altitude.
Yeah, for sure. I think blowing up for me, 3 text messages, maybe an Instagram DM, and I'll be back out in the wilderness. Like, oh God, what a day I've got ahead of me.
That was hard, man. That was you mentioned sort of when I heard you say then sort of in and out of it was hard leaving. It was really hard leaving. It was tough, man, and it feels tough now a little bit as well because I was away when everything here in the US. In Australia at the moment, I know Melbourne's pretty locked down. I think Queensland's not too bad, but Melbourne's really locked down at the moment. I know that. Perth is pretty free, but the borders are closed, right?
Yeah.
Whereas here in the US, the internal borders aren't closed, but man, I went away and everything was on the up. Everything was on the up in a good way. Like, or should I say everything was on the down? Cases were down. People were freeing up again. Even California was loosening up a little bit, which is quite a stringent. New York. But then in that 10 days I was away, everything escalated again. Numbers went up, cases went up, and everyone went into contraction and fear. So I came back and there's all these new rules. You have to wear a mask again. You have to do this. Like, whoa. And so that was pretty intense. And I missed the simplicity of being in nature and being on my own. Now, if that was 30 days in or 50 days in or something, or 20 days in, I don't know, maybe I'd have a different perspective. But that amount of time, I just sort of like, I want to go back to nature. This is connected.
It's crazy. I can imagine you would have been in such a conflicted state because you're coming from this place where you're, for all intents and purposes, one with the oneness. There's no fear. There's pure consciousness and love. Day 4, day 5, I'm assuming you're pumped to come back and see your wife again. There's that really strong urge to, be with her in that state. And then dropping into all the fear and not the least can you call it like a culture war that's kind of, I don't want to be extreme and call it a war, but there is that real thing going on in the US and I think to a lesser extent the whole world as well. I think that would have been really interesting. How did you manage those different fluctuations?
With a little difficulty at the beginning because, I realized that I've got very close friends in Australia, brothers that I've known for 20 plus years, I have very close male relationships and that was tough because I miss my friends. I miss my wife. Sure. That was, I thought about how grateful I am for the people that I have in my life and I'm unable to see them and I don't know when I'm going to be able to be in their physical presence again. And that's a true thing. I mean, my brother messaged me yesterday and said, Steph, I can't come to the US and not letting anyone out unless, you've beat the last 2 years, you've been out of the country for 70% of the time and you can prove that. Like, there's this whole regimen that you have to go through. And so I don't know when I'm going to see my brother. Now, yes, I can go back to Australia. I have to quarantine myself for 14 days at my expense. That's not so much the issue, but being in a small room for 14 days, I mean, I can do that. That's fine. But do I want to?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then can I get back? Can I come back? I don't know. There's so much unknown at the moment. I don't know when I'm going to see my friends and family back in Australia. And so, I've got very close friends in Melbourne, Brisbane, and Perth, particularly Perth, the density of it there. And so I'm doing my best to not future project. I'm just being in the present and making work what I need to make work here and focusing on the amazing things that I do have here and the friendships and the connections that I have here, because we all need tribe, particularly men. I mean, we really need solid tribe in our lives. I just don't know. So that was really hard, man. Like, to answer your question directly, I fucking cried for a couple of days, and
bloody
I
oath.
miss my brethren. I miss my brothers, and I gave myself permission to be pretty fucking sad about that, and also angry about that, and angry about the way that we're handling this as a society and as a collective. Leadership they're not failing us, but they're not exactly. They're not exactly putting in their best efforts.
No, my opinion too.
Yeah, and I believe it's, people aren't too happy with leadership in Australia either. With what's his name, Scott
Morrison.
Scott Morrison. I don't even know the fucking Prime Minister of Australia. It's so bad. ScoMo or something they call him.
Yeah, well, you're from Fiji, so it's all good. Compared to me, mate, you look like you're from Fiji. I was just so funny at the start of this podcast, man. I put this light on, and I'm like, okay, I could put the tanning light on, or I could be the really authentic one. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go for the authentic one, and I look like a ghost. Oh God.
Well, I'm getting in the sun, so I do get my sun here. That's for sure.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that, mate. That helps me with everyone that's going to watch the show.
But yeah, so to answer your question, it was difficult. I gave myself a couple of days before I immersed myself into work again, and work service clients and so forth. And but I wish I probably had even maybe 4 or 5 days integration. I gave myself 2 days. That was okay. But yeah, it was that was a tough transition because of the time, and so I still don't know when I'm coming back to Australia and what that looks like. I mean, I live here obviously, but I visit at least once, twice a year if I can. But I can't now, so that's tough. And that distance is difficult. I speak to this often. Make sure that you've got physical tribe as a man in your proximity, and I do here. Don't get me wrong, and it's also different. And I'm building that as well. And I'm building the intimacy and the trust and the connection around that. But again, that's not a super hard thing for me to do, but it's not about that. It's also about, I've had brethren that we've had such diverse experiences with for 20 plus years, 23 years.
Yeah, it's massive.
You just don't replicate that. And this distance, this isolation that we're creating in our world at the moment, it's a little concerning.
It's really concerning. Just, to bring you home for a second. So I'm in Melbourne right now, and we've just moved into stage 4 lockdown over the past 2 days or 3 days or something.
That's even deeper than what it was.
It's even deeper, man, and it's deep. So we have an 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. home curfew.
What?
Yeah, only one of us.
Are you fucking serious?
No. We can't leave the house after 8 p.m.
For no reason at all?
No reason whatsoever. Yep. As far as I can understand, it's no reason. You have to be in your homes. It's getting a bit. I'm interested in conspiracies, but not to the point where I start to lose myself down a rabbit hole. But you read 1984 back at school, and you're like, okay, there's a bit of similarity going on here. But that's just one of them, man. Like, only 1 hour a day we're allowed outside for exercise. Only one of us, so my partner and I live together, only one of us can leave the home to go shopping at any particular time. So I think it's something as bizarre as we can both drive to the supermarket, but only one of us can walk in there or something like that. It's very convoluted. We all have to wear masks compulsory, fines and things. And yeah, it's just, I'm so torn because.
Is that written in the Constitution? Is that
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Pisses me off, man. So they won't tolerate that shit here in Texas.
Yeah.
They'll pull a fucking gun on you. They just don't
exactly.
care.
Exactly.
They would. Oh man, that is so autocratic. That is so dictatorial.
It's very restricting. And the thing that worries me the most is that I know suicide numbers are really, really on the high. And to your point before, you said, like, when I came home, I allowed myself the time to be sad. I allowed myself that time to cry. You have a very strong emotional intelligence. This is your area. This is where you kill it. And my biggest worry, and particularly men as well, my biggest worry is the typical guy who's doesn't give a shit about mental health, is just not interested in it, doesn't care about spirituality, loves Fords, is really into his cars. And for whatever reason, he's just struggling with these emotions that he has no idea, he doesn't even know the word emotion, and he's starting to have these crazy thoughts that he can't control. You and I know that if we feel jittery, I had a coffee before, after the podcast, I know I just need to walk the dog and exercise because it's good for me. Yeah. I know these things. We know these things. But for people out there that just don't know, with this whole collective fear and these lockdowns and things, it really worries me. And you see the cases of suicide and domestic abuse, man. Domestic abuse is going up massively as well. It's just a scary time.
Oh man, I'm sorry that you're going through that in Melbourne. I didn't realize that. That's far, to be honest with you, man, I think that's far stricter than anywhere here in the US.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. And I think, I don't know, people are doing what they can. I mean, the Aussie spirit, like it's, we're all in this together sort of stuff. And I think that kind of spirit pervades over into the US as well, I'm sure. But it's just very strange. And you can look at it from that perspective of there's a whole lot of fear mongering and people are afraid and all these sorts of things. But it's just annoying because we know what fear does. Fear separates, and separation is the last thing we need right now. Crazy stuff, man.
So crazy, man.
I know. Oh, well, I'm sure we'll get through it. We'll see what the vaccine does. And I think, for whatever reason, it's just going to, I mean, I can't see myself getting the vaccine, but for whatever reason, I think it's just when that works and they find a strand and things might start going back to normal there and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, we'll see, hey?
Yeah, I hope so, man. Look, I know this isn't, it doesn't really matter what the podcast is about, so to speak. We're on this subject matter now. I was going to say it's not relevant, but I suppose it is. Look, I mean, it's not about whether the vaccine, if I'm for or against vaccines. Personally, if a vaccine can help, if there's complete transparency on the ingredients, if it's been trialed, tested, if there's accountability from the organisation or the pharmaceutical company that's producing it, in other words, that if there is inherent accountability on something going wrong, that they are liable for that, which they're not, particularly in the US. And this isn't conspiracy. This is very matter of fact legislation that was passed years ago and so forth through certain administrations. And vaccines that can genuinely help people, then great. And, there's no long-lasting negative side effects in terms of there's ingredients in there that are not really absorbed by the human body in an effective way. Great, let's get vaccines. Sure. Personally, I'm not going to get a vaccine.
Same.
And it's not going to happen. I'm not doing it. But I can see how if there's a vaccine available and they make it, and quote unquote works, and it's effective in a healthy way, and it's voluntary, not mandatory, because that's a completely different conversation.
Very.
And it brings the world back online, not in a way like we were doing business before, because I think that way's done. It was done for a long time. And I've been saying it. I'm 38 now. I think I'm 38. Yeah, I'm 38. I've been saying it since I was 22, 23. The way that socioeconomically we function, we're done. It's been, so it's great for that in terms of what this has exposed is that we can't function in this way anymore. However, we're still trying to hold on. As a collective, we're still trying to hold on to the old. And I just don't know how useful that's going to be. I just don't. It's exposed. This virus has exposed a lot. And I'm just wondering, has it exposed enough for us to make some serious changes? I just don't think so.
Do you mean holding on in terms of like the typical suit and tie, 9 to 5 type career sort of thing? The American dream? Yeah,
that's part of it. I mean, again, if we're talking about that 9 to 5, there's many studies that have been done in certain European countries, more liberal European countries, that have been testing and experimenting with 4-day work weeks and 6-hour work days and so forth. And they're finding that the metrics around efficiency and productivity is far higher, and happiness, general happiness within each individual and company culture is also higher as well. And so again, we're just attached to old ways of doing things. It's the same with the education system. I mean, the education system is a derivative of the industrial era. It was used, that structure and format was used to train industrial workers on assembly lines. I mean, let's fucking do something a little different here, guys. Just think a little laterally. I mean, fuck. Do we really need to get that archaic? I mean, we're shifting, we're changing. Technology, globalization, human consciousness, the expansion and access to different cultures and ancient mystical ways of being that don't need to be mystical anymore. I think we're just a little behind. And so that 9 to 5 suit and tie, the corporate world, parts of that, the entrenched culture of that, I think is dying, but I don't think we're allowing it to die. I think that's the issue. When there's resistance, right? Change wants to happen. Some want change. Some want to remain in the familiar. There's massive tension and resistance. And in that tension and resistance, if we stay there, we get more tension and resistance. So something needs to give. We need to go back to where we were or move forward. But, there's always going to be tension and resistance. It's just, can we minimize it?
Yeah. This is a really interesting topic of discussion at the moment. I think people are, desperate for some kind of alternative here. And, to your point, all the mystical texts and all this sort of stuff, they're not even mystical, in comparison to what we're doing now. They're just practical, like not the least this idea. I think people are very resistant to this idea of like a spiritual politics, because the way, look, as an outsider looking in, the whole US political frame seems like it's a popularity contest of who can drop the mic the best in like 2 minutes. And it's just like, when are we going to start to realize that, like, hang on a second, you're about to be the most powerful person in the world speaking with another potentially very powerful person. Let's try to figure out together and drop the ego bullshit to figure out together like how we can save the world and be friends with everyone. I'm not trying to say that sarcastically or tongue in cheek. Like, it's very, very serious. And it like, I remember having those kinds of conversations when I was 15. I remember Michael Campbell, who had the locker next to me, said, "I have more MySpace friends than you." And I was gutted, man. And I hear that kind of thing going on over there.
Yeah. I hear you, man. I just, when I see, and I'm human just like the next person. When I'm faced with atrocity or difficulty or challenge, there's parts of me that at times crumble, and there's parts of me that at times experience a great deal of difficulty. And I do my best to see that silver lining within every experience. And this is one of them in the sense that we have a real opportunity to do things differently at quite a drastic scale, like a larger scale, not just something really small and minute. I think that's what we're we're missing. That's the that's the notion that we're missing. We're too busy surviving, and we don't have to be, but we make ourselves. It's like we're glutton for punishment. You know, we can do things differently, and I don't know completely what differently looks like, man. I really don't. Like, I've got some ideas, but I think we have to be open to. Okay, well, let's not just fight for the old. Let's actually look at what does it mean to do something different and get different minds, great minds coming together and thinking about this and being open to it. I think that's where, from that creative think tank, we will come into a greater place. And that healthy warrior will come out in us, particularly as men, as opposed to that wounded warrior.
Yes.
Which is all about fighting for the old and the entrenched and keeping one way of living alive. Now, sometimes that's useful because we have to retain our sense of lifestyle because it's actually important and it's healthy. Like, look at something like Avatar, the movie Avatar. But again, that's all value-based, right? Like, you just had competing values. You had a society that was deeply connected to nature, and there was a oneness and a unity there, and there was a communication. And you had another society that was all about, raping and pillaging and industry at any cost and energy consumption and expansion at any cost. And there wasn't a deeper understanding of how do we work in symbiosis. Now, it's not that value set is better than the other value set. It's just different. What do we value as a society? But we also have to, we're finite beings, so we have to look at the caring and the carrying capacity of the earth, ecologically, socioculturally, socioeconomically, geopolitically. We have to look at what systems are we implementing in the world? And when we talk about men, we all have a role to play. And for me, I think that men, it's time that we're transitioning out of that wounded warrior into that healthy warrior archetype that is fighting for sustainability and longevity, that is fighting for a deeper level of connection, that is fighting for clarity because the healthy warrior knows himself, knows his values, isn't driven by constriction and retraction and fear. And I think that's the opportunity that we have. And that warrior, by the way, resides within men and women. It's not just men. Just specifically speaking to men, because men for so long have led on the front lines in this way. And some of us have done an amazing job. Some of us not so amazing. I think we have to take ownership and responsibility of that as well and look at this as a potential turning point in our world.
Yeah, totally, man. I think I'd love for you to speak a bit more on that. When you're dealing with men, dealing with, that's a weighted term. When you're dealing with these fuckers who are paying you money, mate, God, what's up with your life? What does a transition from that wounded masculine to that warrior essence kind of look like? Like, what are some of the typical resistance changes for guys kind of listening, and for women as well, like you said?
Well, for me, the wounded warrior is really stuck in the past, is abrasive, argumentative, is more focused on the fight for the sake of the fight as opposed to why he or she is fighting, he or she is protecting. It's less about servant-based leadership and less about stewardship and more about the addiction to adrenaline and the addiction to tension and friction and fight,
Nice.
It's that wound of, I need to fight at any cost to protect myself, to figure out to defend what is me or what I think is right, as opposed to listening. And, for me, an intelligent warrior and a humble warrior and a warrior that is healthy only uses his or her weapons or only goes to the fight as a last resort because they have that confidence. They know they can fight. They know they can protect. They know they can go to that level of intensity. They choose not to. It's a last resort thing. Whereas that wounded warrior just fights for the sake of fighting for ego because ultimately they're so insecure that it's a false bravado that comes out. It's not a calmness. It's just, I'm going to protect myself because I'm so insecure. So I'm going to display feats of strength and oppression, subjugation, judgment, harsh critique, autocracy, because that's a mask that hides my fragile ego.
Mm, Yeah, I remember we were speaking about that physicality aspect coming out as a last resort. I think you and I both started jiu-jitsu around a similar time. Obviously, we haven't been able to do that anymore. Wait, is jiu-jitsu open over there? No.
Bro, I don't even know, and I really need to check it out. I was actually just talking to Christine about this the other day. I'm really hanging to go back. I don't actually think it is.
No,
I don't think it, and that's why I haven't even bothered looking. But in saying that, you reminded me, so I'm going to send an email. There's a school just up the road, Bar Grace. So I'm going to have a look. That's where I was meant to go, but it all shut down when coming in March.
Yeah. Can you imagine doing that with a mask on? That'd be bizarre. It's like genuine poker face going on there. I know. But to your point, man, like, and I think we were discussing this before, so we don't need to go into it too much, but you watch like a black belt, and they are almost bored. And me as a white belt, I'm like, I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to pull my knife out. I'm going to get you. And they're waiting for you just to do the shittiest move. And they're like, okay, black belt, done. It's a shocking feeling, but I mean, it's very, very humbling.
Yeah, I hear that.
It's awesome. And I think there was another thing I wanted to speak to you about, mate. Last time we finished, you mentioned that you were putting a whole thing together around this. I think it was like an online service with yourself and Christine around being the king and being the queen.
Yeah. There was, when did we speak last, by the way?
Oh, man, I think it was
last year.
I think, it was definitely last year. It was maybe like September-ish, October-ish.
Yeah, so what I was putting together was, and we've run two of these already. They've been super
sick.
Be the Queen. And
Be the Queen.
I think that's what we were talking about. So
Yep.
there's a couple of things, and I'll go through both of them. So Be the Queen was one of them, which is just for single ladies, essentially, and for ladies in relationship, but it's more for single women that are looking to really do some deeper work on themselves and attract a very healthy relationship and relationships in their lives. Heal the past wounds that they've developed or that they've been exposed to over the years, heal the parental relationships, just get really clear on who they are, who they want to be, get that support around them, and then begin to attract healthy men in their lives, healthy, intimate, romantic partnerships. So there's Be the Queen. We're just at the tail end now of our second one, which has been super successful and super amazing. And then we were doing some deeper work with both men and women. We were meant to have we call it, our brand is Love Amplified. So we were meant to have Love Amplified brand. There was a 5-day event in September here in Austin, but we had to cancel it because of COVID. So, and that was really bringing people together. And that wasn't just couples, that was individuals as well, but showing people and helping people understand polarity dynamics, masculine, feminine energetics, helping people relate to each other beyond just communication, but also how to see when someone is coming from wounding and when they're not. And there's going to be really powerful breath work and somatic work and a lot of that deeper inner child healing as well. But we had to cancel that. So instead, what we've done is we ran an inner child workshop, virtual workshop. It was, again, super successful. We had 300 people there in April. It was amazing. We've got another level 1 at the end of this month and a level 2 now in September, replacing that Love Amplified. So it's Love Amplified in a Child, which is a level 2 3-day experience as well, which again is just going deeper into those childhood wounds to help people. So it's less about sexuality, less about sexual dynamics and sexual polarity, but more about laying some foundations and clearing out the clutter. So there's a component of what we were going to do. But again, when things come back online next year, we'll have an amazing retreat as well here in the US.
It was right. It was the Be the Queen, I think, that really got me interested when you were talking about it, because I think I'd love for you to speak on this. I think from what I can see by following people like yourself and John Weil and stuff, there's this really good understanding, I suppose, that like the social feminine, if you could call it that has been oppressed for so long by that wounded masculine archetype that we're talking about before, has this, and correct me if I'm wrong, this difficulty relaxing into love and relaxing because, you know, there's just so much clutter and baggage from the past. Yeah, what are some of the roadblocks that come up in that work with the individuals that you work with?
Well, it's a really great question, Tom. So a friend of mine, she asked me a question last night. She said, what do you feel some of the biggest issues are with men and women separately, generally speaking? So just generalization.
Mm-hmm.
And I left her a voice and I said, you know, some of the biggest issues that I feel women face is not having a sense of safety. There was a mass study done, and I can't remember which university, but essentially the question asked that if there were no men in the world, as a woman, what would be the first thing you would do? And the overwhelming majority of women answered, I would just go for a walk by myself at night. So there's this deep, visceral, and this isn't blaming men, saying men are bad, not at all. It's just the way we've been relating to each other, it hasn't been the healthiest. And we have to, there's some responsibility we need to take. And so women generally, and again, there's so many women that I work with, they feel unsafe and they've either been physically, emotionally, sexually abused. And by the way, so many men have too, man. So anecdotally speaking, when I'm, and this isn't empirical, so this is anecdotal. When I'm, and what that is that just subjective personal observation, what I mean by anecdotal. Just for anyone that's curious about what that means, it's not common terms, right? So when I run groups where there's 10 people or 100 people and I go through, we start, you know, clearing out clutter of the past, abuse and so forth, man, minimum 6-7 men out of 10 have been sexually abused. Minimum.
Wow.
Minimum. Women, it's even higher. So this is a very, very common thing, right? And a very common theme. And so women feel very unsafe. Men feel very unworthy, very not appreciated, very not respected, very, very confused and lost. So these are the common themes that men and women have. And of course, there's a foundation of not feeling safe. When you peel that back for a man, it's not feeling safe. And it's more, the funny thing is, it's feeling less emotionally safe for men. So it's I don't feel emotionally safe enough. And for women, I don't feel physically safe enough in my body. And in society, which is a sort of, you think is a paradox, right? But it's not, because men aren't taught how to emote. Societal values, familial values don't really give men the opportunity to emote clearly. And additionally to that, it's either not acceptable or we don't know how. And so when we don't know how to do something, guess what? Men don't, when they're uncertain about something, they don't feel very safe and confident. Or they don't feel very confident. When you don't feel confident, you don't feel safe because you don't believe in what you're able to do. So there's so much uncertainty and unknown. So ultimately, we're facing very similar issues, just in slightly different ways, expressed differently.
That's so interesting, man. It's so unfortunate. And, you know, when I first started looking at myself, it was very much like I didn't know how to express emotions and all that sort of stuff. But it's so funny when you think about that, like an animal doesn't know how to express itself. It's like you're the sun going, I don't know how to be hot.
It's such a fucking great example that you just, and that's exactly, it's like men don't have a limbic system. It's like we don't have emotive faculties. And so of course we do. Yeah. But we're not taught how to access them and leverage them in an empowered way for various reasons, some that I've already outlined. And I think that's a big issue, right? It's a big pain point.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're working with these men, do you feel like when you finally give them access to that, not necessarily just time, because they'd be like, oh yeah, I've tried to sit and cry or be angry or whatever, and it's just never come out. When it finally comes out, I'm sure it would just come out by the absolute thousands, you know?
Yeah, I think about that. When a man has access to, when a man is given permission and feels confident enough to access his emotions, he can really go there. It can take some warming up though. Fuck, it takes some warming up, like it really does. But if we can get, and again, it's not about being leaky, and I hope I'm answering this correctly. It's not about being leaky in one's emotions. It's not about, being over vulnerable and not having context and structure around that. That's because that's not what men want to do, and it's not what women want, and it's not what men want either. However, when we can emote in safe spaces and express, not just emote, but express and share, that's the most important. Share the fucking load, share the burden. We feel so isolated as men. That's another common theme: complete isolation in men. The modern man is so isolated. He's alone. He doesn't have close friends. I'm a rarity, man. I know I'm a rogue in when I say I've got quite a few different friends that I'm deeply rich connections with. That's not common, man, at all. I've worked many years on that. That's a very uncommon thing. And so men are so isolated, but once you give them permission and the safe space environment to share and unload with other men, particularly witnessed by brethren, the sense of familiarity, we start to shift that narrative around men can't express or men can't emote or men are shut off. We start to shift that narrative. We start to connect as a humanity at a deeper level. We start to celebrate our differences as opposed to judge our differences.
Yeah. And you said something there, which I would love for you to talk on more. You said, without becoming kind of flimsy or gooey, and because there's a real resistance, and I think it's a fair resistance as well. Like I have that resistance for this push for men to express themselves. I think that's like one half of it. But to your point, it's like, it's good to express our emotions, but where's the structure and the container around that and the openness? Could you talk a little bit more about what that all means?
Yeah. So essentially, if I have met, again, I'll just speak from personal experience. I have many women that come to me and say, I want my man to be more emotional. I want him to be able to express his emotion and so forth. And then it can be something that's very new. And men are told there's this narrative in society that you have to be more emotional, you have to do this, you have to express. And so some men lean into that. And then there are many women that push them away.
Yeah.
And they then feel rejected because it's too overwhelming for people, not just a woman, but even men. It's just too overwhelming to experience a man emote at that level with no understanding of where his emotions are coming, because he's turned on the tap. It's years of oppression and suppressed emotions and suppressed thoughts and not sharing with anyone. And it can be too overwhelming for whoever's holding that unless they've done deep inner work themselves. And even then, no one person should have to hold that. So then they're pushed away, then they're rejected, and then that notion is reinforced, I shouldn't express because it just gets me more pain, so I'm going to shut down again. And so that's why it's important. Yeah. That's why it's important that men are sharing with other men in groups of men where we're holding each other and seeing each other, physically or metaphorically holding each other and supporting each other and giving each other context, giving each other permission so that we don't bring that overwhelming emotion to our partners, but we bring truth, vulnerability, and transparency to our partners and emotion, but not in a leaky or unstructured way where we have no idea what it means. Because that woman's going to want to know, what does this mean to you? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Because there's an expectation that men know things, right? We want to know things, even self-expectations.
Yes.
So, there is something to be said for cognitive interaction and intelligence and understanding and knowing, but we have to go through a process of feeling and shifting somatically those big emotions through our nervous system and those trauma before we can understand it and compartmentalize it and be in clear, intelligent coherence with it. And when we do that in a self-reliant way, in solitude and with other men or other support systems, psychologists, counselors, etc., support groups, we bring a more refined, clearer version of that to our loved ones, to our children, to our brothers, our sisters, our wives, whatever. That's more powerful and that's more empowering for all people involved. It doesn't mean you're not being honest. You are. It's just coming from a more coherent way, a more connected, mindful way.
Yes. So, and obviously we're speaking from the heterosexual perspective now, but the masculine and feminine. When the feminine is saying something akin to, I want my guy or whatever to be me more emotional, it's not so much. Am I right in saying it's not so much they want them just to turn the tap on and go for it, but just even a little bit of presence to the relationship, like, hey, I'm really tired. I had a big day at work. I'm going to tune out and watch the footy. But when I've watched the highlights, I'll make some tea and we can talk about the day. Just even a little bit,
I think that's healthy. I think understanding why men tune out as well is important. So from a physiological perspective, there's a depletion in testosterone at the end of the day. And so
Mm.
engaging in, I don't want to say mindless, but very simple activities help us relax in a beta state. So they relax our beta brainwave state. So we're still awake, we're still present, and we're restoring testosterone and we're
Mm.
restoring our physiology. And so that's one of the reasons why we tune out. And also
Wow.
most men have been very complex all day, and women have as well. People in our society are just very complex during the day with problem solving and business and like an influx of, information overload and over like desensitization and sensory overload. And so we want to unpack. So you have to make agreements with your partners in relationships. Say, look, I generally, when I get home, I have big days. I need to unwind. And I also at the same time want to connect with you, but I want to be really replenished. So give me 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour. I'm just going to go for a cycle or go for a walk or watch TV for 20 minutes. Or I'm going to read a book, or I'm just going to have a shower, or I'm going to relax and I'm going to go for a walk. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to be present to you. Like you got to have those agreements, and work what is that for both of you? What does that look like for both of you? And that's for women as well. Women are going to want that space. It's not just a man thing. It's an attachment theory thing. It's a psycho-emotional, it's an upbringing thing, a conditioning thing, a product of our environment thing. There's many factors that influence that, and not just male and female. There's masculine and feminine energetics to it, but it's more having agreements in your container as in a relationship.
Shit, dude, I didn't know. I didn't know anything about that testosterone depletion. Is that you've been getting into that area a little bit lately?
Yeah, I've been, I'm not an
Sure.
expert by any means, but I've been into neuroscience for quite some time, and neuroscience of relationships, understanding what's happening in the brain and hormones and bodies and so forth. But yeah, I'm very fascinated by that. Not for a way to explain everything. It's just part of who we are. Biology is part of who we are. It's not the be all and end all, but it's important. And so I want to understand psychology, emotions, biology. I want to understand the integration, the psycho and immunobiology of how we work and all of that. It's spirituality. And it's important to.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So even something as simple as just when you're in that depleted state, like I know this can probably sound obvious, but just resting to actually regain it. Do you know like the buffer on that? Like, does it take a while? Obviously, I'm very interested. I want to get my squat up. So
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you're talking about activity and passivity, right? You're talking about active, passive. When we're talking about replenishing and being able to accomplish goals, rest is a big part of that. The quality of sleep that we have is a big part of that. Neuroscience is demonstrating this. Our ability to rest during the day, it assists with that as well. What the exact buffer is, I'm not sure, man. I'm still doing so much research, and there's so much research out there. And some of it is also what works for you as an individual too. There is some subjectivity to it.
yes, yeah, no, for sure. I think it's such an important, having all these things. You hear people talk about things just from the spiritual perspective, and there's a real, almost a dogma with that. We are all one. It's like, okay, cool, I get it, but I've got a penis. There's all these other things as well. That I think are really important as well. So, yeah, that's awesome, man. Mate, I won't keep you for too much longer. I love doing. I think. What was fun about this podcast for me was I had a very basic idea of kind of what I wanted to hit on, specifically that vision quest and how the transition was. And then very quickly, it's just like, now I feel like I've caught up with Steph, now I feel like we know each other again. So it's good.
Yeah.
It's awesome, man. What's coming up for you, mate? What's coming up in the next couple of months?
Well, yeah, got the inner child workshop from a service work perspective, got the inner child workshops level 1 and level 2, which are super deep and powerful and fun. We have a virtual vision quest coming up, actually, helping
sick.
people just get their lives back online because there's been so much turmoil. So it's a 6-week virtual vision quest where we're going to really help people go through the process of releasing the past, getting in the present, identifying their future, and integrating that into their lives moving forward. So we're excited about that. I'm excited to have a Christmas winter again. I'm just excited about that. Try and get in the snow for Christmas this year. I'm excited about that. Excited about starting some new projects and service around child sex trafficking. It's just something that my wife and I are passionate about. And have been for some time. And also the environment. I'm very passionate about ecology, so getting involved in some side projects there as well, just unpacking that and investing time, energy, and money in that as well, and being a part of some really big things. And so that's unraveling. So we're really excited about that give back component as well. I'm excited about that. Excited about I'm on a new program for pressing and pull-ups and just my health and wellness and getting my gym sorted, just finalizing that, my home gym, my garage gym. So yeah, just little things that I'm very grateful for that I have access to, bro, that I'm just grateful for, man. I'm just really grateful that I have food in my fridge and I live in a beautiful home and a roof over my head and amazing people in my life and get to have these conversations, and just very humbling, man. So I want to give as much as I can. I'm excited for more creation as well. And I'm working on some pretty cool things at the moment in terms of how I can serve at a deeper level. So just those things.
That's brilliant, man. Have you podcasts, books on the agenda?
I've written a book in 2012, but I'm absolutely. Book is. I'm in the process of writing a couple of books right now. So
nice.
I just chip away at that. And I enjoy that. And I probably need to prioritize that at some point soon. I think I will in the new year. I'm looking at what direction I want to take with that. Podcast as well, yes. It's just a matter of launching it in an appropriate way. And again, getting there. Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. You do. I love that response, because I think people are like, yeah, I'm doing this. I'm like, but is it fun? Like, are you enjoying it? No. Yeah. Oh, great.
Yeah, I want to be in the space, and I love, and again, I do a lot of videos, so that's my podcast fix, so to speak. But I do need to get on iTunes and get my podcast up. But again, that's in good time.
Totally, man, totally. No, mate, I love talking to you. I've had the pleasure, obviously, to chat to you now for probably about 2 hours in total now, and I think you're really one of the few out there that, you really do put your money where your mouth is. You kind of like, hey, vision quests are important. I did a 5-day one. Just by the way, I didn't eat for 5 days. Like, oh, okay, this dude's legit, So I really appreciate you, mate, for showing up and doing the work, and also too, you can tell that you really love it, and I think that's so important in this space. There are so many people out there that preach all these things, but you see, it's like it's a job for them, and this isn't a job for you. It's deeper than that. It's more rewarding than that, and the open and honest conversations you seem to have with your wife, the way you live your life, I think is a real testament to how good you are at this work. So I really appreciate you for coming on the show, mate. It won't be the last, and I'm looking forward to it again.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you very much.
Awesome, man. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much. Talk soon.
Hey, guys. If you enjoyed the content, you are more than welcome to click the link in the description below. That will take you right to a free webinar where I will be taking you exactly through how to design a framework for your life and create that mission that will bring about a sense of intrinsic value to you. Go for it.